eyes on Kenya as opposition leader Raila Odinga swears himself in as the people's president. The 30th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, ends with more commitments of the leaders to fight corruption in their countries. Super blue blood moon eclipse sighted in China, Japan, Australia, America, and India. Well, these are some of the issues we will be talking about on this episode of the program. Our first-time viewers, Global Update is the best program that brings you up to speed with developments around the world in the course of the week. I am Oyeyemi Ajayi saying welcome. Now, Kenya is the first story on our radar. Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga has sworn himself in as the people's president. Odinga had boycotted the October 26, 2017 election rerun, claiming that poll would not be fair. And this action gave President Uhuru Kenyatta a victorious 98% of votes. However, security forces decided not to make any move of arresting the supporters and disrupting the swearing-in of Raila Odinga. Observers are of the view that this move would bring more division to Kenya and affect democratic growth and development in the country.
It portends danger for the Kenyan society and Africa at large, in the sense that the elections have been conducted twice. The matter has gone to the Supreme Court that has ruled in favor of the current president, and I believe that for somebody to just wake up one day and say he's president of Kenya is totally wrong. It sends a very bad signal. He should respect the verdict of the people and the views of the court so as to promote stability and peace in Kenya and in Africa at large. Because that's what we call contagion. What happens in one country can affect the other. We are preparing for elections in Nigeria, and we would not want such a situation to occur here, because it can lead to anarchy, to bloodshed, and even the disintegration of the society on ethnic, religious, and other biased lines that are not good for stability, and that is the truth.
Now, different reactions have continued to crop up, even right from Kenya. First, authorities have suspended 3 television and radio stations that broadcast the symbolic presidential oath in the Nairobi Park, though a court ruled against this action. Also, the government has declared the opposition National Resistance Movement a criminal group.
Well, Kenyatta should still invite him for discussions and show him that I think what is paramount as a patriot, he should try and promote peace and abide by the verdict of the people and the verdict of the courts. He should make him see reason.
Political analysts have called for reform in the country's electoral system, as this development has more implications on the economic growth of the country.
We should not be, something that should not be lost is the need to reform Kenya's electoral process. Yes, Raila Odinga may not achieve much out of his declaring himself or swearing himself in as the people's president, but we cannot sweep away his issues, the issues that led into this state. We can't sweep it under the carpet.
The Minister of Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyema, makes the stand of the Nigerian government known.
Our response is that the rule of law must prevail, As you recall, the elections were held in Kenya. Kenyatta was declared the winner. Raila Odinga went to court, and he went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided that there were irregularities and ordered that the election should be annulled and new elections conducted. and with timelines. That was accepted by President Kenyatta. New elections were held, but Raila Odinga believed that there were more fundamental issues that had to be addressed, in the election process in Kenya. And therefore, he refused to take part in the rerun of those elections. But Kenyatta went ahead, took part in those elections, and won. And he was declared validly elected. His election was validated by the Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court that had earlier ruled the first elections invalid, and by the Kenyan election tribunal, the election commission. So as far as the legality of it, it's clear, established by the Supreme Court and the Kenyan Electoral Tribunal Commission. So Nigeria, goes with that, recognizes President Kenyatta as a duly and lawfully elected president of Kenya.
All right, now to the just concluded African Union Summit. Nigeria has challenged the African leaders and other principal architects of the African Union to speed up action towards the establishment of free trade area for the continent. President Muhammadu Buhari, who through the challenge at the 30th African Union Summit, said this will provide the continent with tremendous opposition to achieve a significant growth driven by intra-African trade. Now, still on this summit, Africa has been in the news for the wrong reasons, particularly on illegal migration, where thousands die trying to cross over to Europe through the desert or Mediterranean. Even when thousands die in the adventure and others who survive tell gory stories, many more are risking their lives for a journey they think will take them to the promised land. What are the reactions of the African leaders about this issue at the 30th AU Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where they resolved to fight corruption? Our correspondent, Makut Simon Machan, is our guide.
Slavery has made too much harm to Africa in the past for us to be able to accept new forms of slavery today. We must maximize the benefits of orderly migration while stamping out abuses and prejudice.
Secretary General of the United Nations Antonio Guterres addressing African leaders at the 30th Summit of the African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. To him, this is a global catastrophe that casts a dark shadow on humanity, particularly in Africa, where the menace is growing and giving birth to another form of slavery. So how did Africa get to this point where most of its vibrant youths will do everything possible, even at the risk of death, to get out of the continent? Many answers have been theorized, but corruption stands tall.
Corruption and its effects have many sides. It poses real threat to national security, unity and survival of the African state and people.
Luckily, the continent is coming to terms with how much damage corruption has inflicted on its peoples and has appointed Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari to champion it.
In the past, helped perpetuate the narrative that Africa is a burden. This way of thinking has been around for years. Fixing it won't take a year, but it need not take more decades either.
These African countries from which the migrants are coming should also be doing a lot more to prevent their nationals, undertaking these perilous trips.
So, to what extent can the fight against corruption help in checking the problem of illegal migration?
So if we tackle the issue of corruption and the money is used to develop the continent, then we'll be solving to a large problem the issue of migration. If jobs are, if you put money in infrastructure, you're creating, you're building infrastructure on the continent. I'm sure a lot of the youth going abroad will not be going.
The theme says winning the fight against corruption. So they already recognize that it is a fight that must happen. So this is for me, this is a welcome development. Not just welcome, it also shows that a lot of things has to go into it. You cannot win a fight if you're not prepared.
Now joining us in the studio is our correspondent Makut Simon Macha, who was present at Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the venue of the event. Makut, welcome to Global Update. Now, how serious do you think the African leaders are in the fight against corruption?
Well, thank you very much, Shimi. You would realize that the theme for each AU summit is not just accidentally chosen. It's derived from an issue that they hold passionate. And this decision to make fight against corruption the theme for the 30th summit was reached at the 29th summit, where they decided that they needed to focus on the issue of corruption, how to tackle it. Because Africa, it was realized, loses up to $50 billion annually to corruption. And so you can imagine what $50 billion could do for the continent, all lost to corruption. So they have decided that this time around, Africa needs more. Now, if you listen to President Muhammadu Buhari's presentation there, he clearly showed that there was an urgent need for all African countries to individually and collectively come together to fight corruption, because corruption transcends borders. Corruption, decimates every attempt to make sure that you get things right, infrastructure, health, education, and so on. So they have decided this time around to make sure they focus on it. And by that, there's some kind of checks within themselves also to begin to purge themselves of any corrupt tendency, and whatever it is they need to do to build institutions, to build capacity, to conscientize their people, to make sure that business is done legitimately and people earn their living.
Okay. Well, now, the leaders launched the Single African Air Transport and agreed on the Continental Free Trade. Can you give more insight to this?
Let's start with the issue of the Continental Free Trade. Now, you realize that trade within Africa, between African countries, is very low. And so Africa has resources, but it cannot even share it with itself because of bottlenecks. Every country having its regulations and safeguards and so on. So they have decided this time, why don't they pull together? Why don't they remove some barriers so that there will be easy trade between African countries? And by that, Africa's wealth will at least circulate within Africa for the meantime. That's not to say that they will not trade with other parts of the world, but if you have what you have in Europe, for instance, within the EU trade agreement and so on, you will discover that Africa will perhaps develop faster, and there will be no need sometimes to wait until we send our materials, raw materials outside the continent to get them, manufactured and sent back here. So this will fast track a lot of things. But they have agreed, about 23 countries signed the protocol, and they are going to meet in Rwanda in March to also consolidate on that at an extraordinary summit. So there's quite a lot to be achieved. Now, some of the fears were, of course, that countries will lose their safeguards. For instance, Nigeria could just become a dumping ground, but they have also assured that all those safeguards have been put in place to ensure that that does not happen. On the single air transport initiative, you would also realize that sometimes it's easy for you to fly to Paris before you come back to Niamey from Nigeria than to fly from here to Niamey. You spend 2 days flying to a country in Africa where you should spend like 4 hours. But sometimes you go through Europe, you travel all over the place before you reach there. So they're trying to break this barrier by ensuring that the airlines on the continent, network and work together to ensure that these destinations are easily reached, so that there's easy movement of people, there's easy movement of goods.
Or a part of the sidelines of the summit was the meeting by the leaders of the ECOWAS community. What are the conclusions from that meeting?
ECOWAS leaders met at the sidelines of this meeting. They had met in 2017 where they could not reach a decision on allocation of seats on the ECOWAS Commission. Now, there has been an argument of retaining either 15 commissioners or pruning them down to 9 as canvassed by Nigeria because of the huge wage bill. Now, realize also that Nigeria pays about 75% of the bills of ECOWAS. So Nigeria felt that this bureaucracy is too heavy and it should be reduced. African Union has 54 countries and yet it has 9 commissioners. So why would ECOWAS, that has just about 15 or 16 countries, have 15 commissioners? So they argued on this, but at the end of the day, we understand that they resolved that the 15 commissioners will be maintained, but Nigeria has insisted that the budget of the ECOWAS Commission cannot be raised. So it stays at that. So whether they are going to cut down the wages of the commissioners or however they want to do it is still being worked out. But of course, you know that every country wants to feel belonging, and so they feel that if you share this commissionership, it will give them a sense of belonging. But of course, it's the funding that is the challenge. So that was also reached. They also discussed the issue of Guinea-Bissau, the security situation there, and many other things.
After the visit of President of Equatorial Guinea to Nigeria, the country's High Commissioner to Nigeria, Ambassador Job Esono Mbangono, shared the importance of the visit to President Muhammadu Buhari. The ambassador said both leaders resolved to work together towards creating effective mechanisms of ensuring security and stability for sustainable growth and economic development of the two countries. Here is Patricia Isamiluba in an exclusive interview with the High Commissioner.
I want to appreciate you, sir, for granting us this audience, and the program we're having today to discuss with you, it's called Global Update. It's a program that comes weekly, and we try to discuss issues of concern within the African region, within the global region itself, and bringing it down to Nigeria for lessons to be learned, and probably there are some insights to what we don't know we can bring out. Now, today we want to discuss the presence of your president to our nation, Nigeria. He was here last week, and we want to share in your thoughts. What was the trip all about? How far so far?
Okay, thank you, Patricia, for coming, and I want to appreciate NTA to come to our embassy, our new open embassy, and thank you for coming. Equatorial Guinea and Nigeria, we have relationships since more than 60 years. Even when Equatorial Guinea was still Spanish colony and Nigeria was British, we had Nigerian workers working in Equatorial Guinean cocoa plantation. And Nigeria is remembered in Equatorial to being very effective working. Since then, we were already in contact with Nigerians. There are many Nigerians living and working in Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea obtained independence in October 68. And the government of Nigeria was the first of the government that recognized the new government, the new country. And since then, we have been very, very close, working closely, because after all, we have many interests that link us. I have just mentioned the fact that we have Nigerians still today working in Equatorial Guinea, and also we have a big colony of Equatorial Guineans living in the southern part of Nigeria. And at political level, as I've already mentioned, the government of Nigeria was one of the first that recognized the new government in '68. They established an embassy, and they have been supporting, Nigeria has been supporting Equatorial Guinea even when Equatorial Guinea was not well known. Now Equatorial Guinea is more known, but then we used to receive scholarships from Nigerian government for students from Equatorial Guinea to study in Nigeria. Nigeria helped us with doctors. Nigeria helped us with other professionals that were helping us to develop our country. And today, as you have just mentioned, the fact that the president of Equatorial Guinea just visited Nigeria. This has been a constant. It has been something very, very constant, because I've been serving in Nigeria for the last 8 years, and we had exchange of visit at highest level. Let me just mention the fact that in the last 3 years, since President Buhari is in charge, he has traveled to Equatorial Guinea twice. And the president of Equatorial Guinea also has visited Nigeria twice. This fact alone underlines the importance that we attach to Nigeria. Of course, that there are some challenges at the level of security in the Gulf of Guinea, but we are working together. And I can assure you that we can be happier. We are very satisfied with the level of the relationship we have reached with Nigeria. We are cooperating at security level. We have exchange of visits, not only at the highest level. At the level, we are people, our government officials exchanging views constantly. We are satisfied with the relationship that we have right now with Nigeria.
Now, Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea have a common interest, the Gulf of Guinea. What are those guarantees that people will have in terms of safety, talking about human trafficking, talking about the theft, talking about piracy? What is your government doing to see that there is safety for people within this region?
In March 2016, when President Buhari first visited Equatorial Guinea, we signed a maritime security agreement. That agreement gave us opportunity to patrol jointly together the Gulf of Guinea. So, as you mentioned it, that is an important tool for us to tackle the piracy, the international crime, organized crime in the Gulf of Guinea. We also, you know, the Gulf of Guinea is attracting many people that are not coming there for any good purpose. We are trying to fight them, and we use this agreement. Of course, that Gulf of Guinea is very important for both countries, as you know, because the resources that sustain both economy of Equatorial Guinea, economy of Nigeria, is the oil that is in the Gulf of Guinea. So the stability and security in that area is a key for both countries. And then we have been together working on that. And also we yet to finalize the limitation of the maritime border in the Gulf of Guinea, so that we will know what part belongs to which country. We have been also collaborating, seeing the possibility of not only in security aspect in the Gulf of Guinea, so to collaborate to see how we can together exploit the resources that we have in the Gulf of Guinea. One of the aspects that we more discussed during the last meeting, that summit of Gulf of Guinea Commission, it was precisely the fact that we want all the countries to contribute, so that, because if we don't contribute, the commission of Gulf of Guinea will not be effective. And a new action plan was taken was adopted to see how countries can more contribute. And it's important that we all understand the importance, I said before, the importance of the Gulf of Guinea, because we have not only oil there, we have other resources that are important to the stability, financial stability of both countries. All the countries made a commitment that we will open a new page to strengthen the structure of the Commission of Gulf of Guinea.
We know Equatorial Guinea has some potentials. What would be those things that you would like to see, probably in terms of investment, that people can be able to key into or come over to Equatorial Guinea to benefit out of?
Equatorial Guinea is in the process of diversifying the economy of Equatorial Guinea. You know that the price of the oil was going down, and now we need to diversify our economy. And we think that we are convinced that Nigerian investors can play important role in helping Equatorial Guinea to diversify the economy. So I want to take this opportunity to invite them. My president did it when he was here in Abuja. And also, the last is Equatorial Guinea has magnificent touristic infrastructure. And we would like also to invite Nigeria to take their time to go to Equatorial Guinea to witness what we have there. We have what we call Sipopo. We have Jiblo. These are magnificent infrastructure. And we want Nigeria to take advantage of that with the family. By the way, my brother ambassador Gongulong in Malabo, he always takes his family to Jiblo to enjoy. So I want to take this opportunity for that. And I want to thank you once again, Patricia, for coming in. This is your house. This is the first interview that we are granted in this new embassy, and I hope you will enjoy the embassy. You'll go around and you see how important Nigeria is for us. We have permanent infrastructure also in Calabar and in Lagos. So we build, and because we're in Nigeria to stay.
Terrorism have been seen to be like an issue that has been destabilizing many nations, and your president kind of highlighted a little bit of what Equatorial Guinea is facing, and we here in Nigeria too have our own ball of the game.
Let me just take the opportunity to also explain to you that during the stay of the president, he also explained to President Buhari about the recent terrorist attempt to attack Equatorial Guinea, and hopefully we were able to control the situation. And he openly said during the press conference at the State House here in Abuja, he said that we thank the international collaboration. Government of Cameroon has been extremely helpful. And we see that we understand that this kind of situation, when a country like Nigeria is facing problems like Boko Haram, you need the support of your neighbors. Without your neighbors, there's nothing you can do.
And that's it on this episode of Global Update. Join us again some other time as we have another interesting time bringing to you events and developments around the world as they unfold. I am Oyeyemi Ajayi. Thanks for your time.